Welcome. Welcome to another episode of the Lock of Law 2 podcast. I am your host, Larry Alfred Wiggs II, and I talk about how iSee109 on this podcast. This is a lovely Dominican grown cigar. It's sweet. This is a new experience for me. I have never had a cigar this sweet before. And this is a whiskey and coke, a whiskey, one that I learned about today, and I ran out and bought two bottles. One bottle as a gift, the other bottle as a souvenir. The gift, however, I opened and I'm imbibing a glass here with my cigar. I had to taste it, had to get an experience. And I must say that the experience of having this whiskey and coke as well as this cigar, it's unbelievable. With regard to the whiskey I'm drinking, it is the creation of Nearest Green, Nathan Nearest Green, or Uncle Nearest. If you're familiar with that story, pat yourself on the back. I learned about his story today, and I watched that episode of Sway in the Morning with I believe a Miss Fowler. Forgive me for not having written any notes and prepared for this podcast, but that's pretty much what I do. I just do this impromptu. I let the spirits guide me, if you will. It seems my cigar has gone out. I will need to light this, relight it. But anyhow, as I was saying, this is a whiskey and coke of the brand, rather, of the distillery that was, I don't know how to say it, Nearest Green. Look him up, check him out, buy yourself a bottle. Do yourself the favor of buying yourself a bottle. This is an amazing whiskey. For all that I've heard about how it was distilled and how it was created and how it was brought to my palate, an amazing story. Also a wonderful taste to go with this cigar. My goodness. Now you see here the ashes on my cigar, are pretty tall, and at this point, you see the ashes remain on the cigar in order to help promote the burn. It keeps the burn. But at this point, I've run out of light. I was running around setting up my lighting, setting up my microphone, and there was not enough burn on the tip. So I'm gonna have to flick these ashes and then relight my cigar. Flicking the ashes off of a cigar isn't particularly a wise or a suggested practice. But hey, it's necessary sometimes, especially if you're enjoying the cigar. You want to keep the ashes there. As you can see, I flicked the ashes. You want to keep them there because it promotes the burn on the cigar. All right. Anyhow, I'm gonna relight this and keep the party going. This is my New Year's podcast. More than likely, this will not be an audio podcast, but this is a visual podcast. One that I'm doing. One that I'm bringing to you. I hope you can see that. Almost got it fully lit. Should probably turn that over so it'll burn. Alright, so it's been relit. I puffed on it several times. I'm careful not to puff too quickly. I had that experience in Madrid, Spain, where my intention was to enter the spa, and where they have the jacuzzis and the like, and I was under some pressure, maybe 30 minutes before, maybe 15 minutes before entering the spa. I had a cigar, I wanted to smoke it. I stood outside and I puffed on it rather quickly. And I felt the effects of the cigar headache. And so I didn't feel well enough to enter the spa. And it's all because I smoked the cigar too quickly. So I learned my lesson. That was in Madrid, Spain in 2018. Anyhow, I want to bring this bring this to your attention, this Nearest Green whiskey, and this delicious, it's sweet, a delicious Dominican cigar. Um, while I'm enjoying this, the reason why I initiated this podcast right now is because I wanted to talk about Oman, the wonderful country of Oman, and I thought, man, Oman is a wonderful place to visit, and so that's what this video will be about: getting to Oman, why Oman is so fascinating and should be visited immediately, 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 immediately. If you watch the movie A Night with Beverly Loughlin, then you'll get that reference immediately. But anyhow, Oman. It is formally called the Sultanate of Oman because a sultan presides over the country. The most recent sultan was Sultan Qaboos. And when I lived in Oman, it was during the time or during the reign of Sultan Qaboos. He was aging, however, he was ailing, and he passed away after I left. But he presided over, he reigned over the country at that time. And to his credit, he did wonderful, marvelous things to improve his country. Now, traveling to Oman, that is the subject of this video. Travel to Oman. If you have an opportunity, do it. Go to Oman. It's such a beautiful country. And here's why I say it's such a beautiful country. Because I lived in Saudi Arabia for 2 years. I traveled from Saudi Arabia to the country of Bahrain. And I also visited Qatar, all right, as well as the United Arab Emirates. You're familiar with that country, United Arab Emirates. You've heard of it. Dubai and Abu Dhabi. You've heard of these cities. And then there's Oman. You probably haven't heard a lot about Oman. Just to give you a little bit of taste of how classy Oman is. The first time I heard Oman mentioned in popular culture, personally, first time I heard it, no. Yeah, first time. The first time I heard it was by Felicia Rashad. and she was on the Breakfast Show with Charlemagne the God, Angela Yee, and DJ Envy, right there, and I think they were talking about her becoming a dean or a director at Howard University, but if you check out that interview, you will hear that she mentions Oman. And I thought, as I listened and as I watched that interview, I thought, whoa, she knows Oman. You see, when you know something, then you can talk about it. And in her case, she knows about it. She's been to Oman. And what a classy lady she is. We know her as Claire Huxtable from The Cosby Show, right? So when I heard Felicia Rashad mention Oman, I thought, man, I've done something. I've done something pretty tremendous by living in Oman. So that's just to give you some idea from popular culture, all right, the significance of this place called Oman that I'm going to tell you about. As I said before, I've been to Saudi Arabia, I've been to Bahrain, I've been to Qatar, I've been to the United Arab Emirates, but there's something about Oman, something beautiful, something special, something magical about Oman, and for that reason, you should go there. When I lived in Saudi Arabia, from where I lived in Saudi Arabia, I had to drive about an hour to get to the mountains, the mountainous region. I also had to drive, 20 minutes to get to the beaches, and the beaches in Saudi Arabia are gorgeous. You had to travel pretty far. To get to the mountains, that was in one direction. To get to the beaches, that was in another direction. And then if you wanted to be in the desert, then you had to drive even farther. Saudi Arabia is a desert for the most part. So the desert was always around me. But if you really wanted those beautiful dunes, those sand dunes, if you wanted that experience, you had to drive a distance from where I lived. Okay? But here's the thing. In Oman, as soon as you land, you could take a drive 20 minutes from the airport and you can hit those beaches. Or you can leave the airport and drive 30 minutes, or you don't even have to drive 30 minutes. You could drive 15 minutes and you would be engrossed. You'll be embedded. You'll be surrounded by mountains. Of course, if you want to get to the desert, you have to drive a little bit further, maybe an hour. Of course, all of that region is pretty desert, okay? Pretty much a desert. But in Oman, everything was very accessible. The mountains, the beaches, and the desert. And for that reason, I would suggest, I would recommend, I would say, hell yeah. If you wanted to go to the Middle East, I'd say go to Oman. So those are the reason I would say to travel to Oman. Now, another reason to travel to Oman is because you can do so many things. You can go hiking. You can water sports. You can enjoy water sports. You can go through the deserts. All of that. The people are very kind and very wonderful. And if you're a tourist, it's not the kind of place where you have to be so concerned with how you act and how you present yourself. Okay, what I mean by that is in Saudi Arabia, for instance, especially for women, women have to cover their hair, women have to cover their bodies. Okay, and then men cannot converse, cannot speak to a woman who is not of blood relation in Saudi Arabia. But if you're in Oman, all of that is possible. Okay, ladies, you can let your hair down. Ladies and men, you can talk with no problem. But in Saudi Arabia, no, no, no. It's a nice cigar, but the burn is slowing down. Anyhow, like I was saying, Oman is a wonderful country to visit because of the scenery. You can experience the mountains, the beaches, and the deserts relatively easily. Now they also have wadis. Wadi means water in Arabic, and you have these oases. You have these areas that you can go. If you've been to Mexico and you enjoy the cenotes, then they have sinkholes where you can go swimming in Oman. Think of that. And all of that is rather close, rather near their capital city. So you can experience a myriad of adventures simply by landing in Oman and then going. So I would strongly recommend going to Oman. Now I'm going to tell you about my experience of going to Oman and how I discovered it, okay? Nearest Green. Uncle Nearest. Thank you, Uncle Nearest, for your creation. How did I get to Oman? Well, I'm going to have to light this again. I worked in Saudi Arabia. And after working in Saudi Arabia, that gave me sort of the level of experience, or rather, Saudi Arabia was my introduction to Islamic culture. And I found it was rather easy to apply for a job in Oman and then find myself hired in Oman, given that I had experience in the Middle East. And that was my introduction to Oman. I went to Oman to teach. Went out. I was hired in Oman. And see, okay, another thing is when you travel the globe, you need to get a visa to enter many countries. Saudi Arabia specifically, you need a visa. Oman allows visa on arrival. So you can book your flight, you can fly to Oman freely as an American. I'm speaking directly to the Americans, okay? You can fly to Oman and you can enter their country. And once you arrive, you can apply for a visa. It's called visa on arrival. That is beautiful. But I must say that when I went to Oman for the first time, I was given grief at the airport. There were two attendants, airport attendants and ticket attendants, and they told me that I needed to show proof of my visa before I could board the plane. Now, I had already been hired. I was going to Oman to work, and I would not be issued, or I did not expect to be issued a visa until after I arrived, because of course there's visa on arrival. So what I did was I went to the airport without a visa. I carried my passport, and just as KRS-One says, the real book that you need is the passport. That's the first book, the most important book that you need. Well, anyhow, so I went to the airport with my passport, ID, and I had my flight already paid for, and I was ready to go. And the attendants gave me grief. They told me that I could not board the plane if I did not produce a visa. And I told them, but it's visa on arrival. I'm going for work. Let me on the plane. And they said, nope, show us a visa or you're not getting your luggage, checked in, and you're not going to through customs or through security to board the plane. And I only had an hour. I had less than an hour to board the plane, okay, and to get these were minutes. And so because they gave me grief, I made some errors because I was rushing. So I purchased a visa online, which I later learned was fraudulent. The company stated that they would provide a visa for me if I paid $100 and whatever dollars, but it was all a scam because you don't need a visa. But I paid that money. I had a visa number issued, and I showed it to the attendants to prove that I had a visa to enter Oman. They accepted it, but that was unnecessary. And it's rather unfortunate. It may have been due to prejudice, or it may have been due to fears related to September 11th. If you travel to the Muslim countries, people are sketchy or people are very skeptical and say, why are you really going? That wasn't the case. I was going there for work, in my case. But even that was not a sufficient reason for them. So they gave me a hassle. They gave me grief at the airport. So there's no guarantee that you can get into Oman without that visa or without jumping through some hoops. But I'm saying to Americans, you can go to Oman and you should go to Oman. I mean, the Europeans leave Europe and go to Oman because they already know what I'm telling you. They already know that it's great for adventure. If you want to go to the beaches, go climbing, go hiking. If you want to go to see the sand dunes, whatever you want to do, Oman has it. And it's quite a friendly country. So they gave me grief at the airport, and I paid for a visa I did not need. Once they saw that, they let me board the plane. I went through security and everything was fine. It was when I arrived in Oman and I tried to produce that visa that I had paid for that they said, but why did you pay for a visa, sir? It's visa on arrival. Just stand in that line. It only costs $25 to pay for a visa to come into our country. And I was like, I knew I didn't have to pay. But they forced me to show documents. I fought to get that money back. I had used my credit card, and so after I paid, I contacted the credit card company and I told them reverse that charge. This was a fraudulent company, and the expense I should not have to pay for, and I got my money back, thankfully. So just be wary. If you plan on going to Oman, be aware of that. But you should definitely try to go. Even if you get to the airport and they turn you away, at least you try. Just try, okay? Now, Oman. For all of the reasons I have already stated, the people, the culture, the beauty, you will do yourself a favor by going to Oman. Now, let's say you fly to Dubai because you want to see Dubai. Let's compare Dubai. Dubai is wonderful, and there are plenty of experiences you can have in Dubai. You can go to the sand dunes. But you know what? I think you're going to miss out on the mountains, the mountainous regions in Dubai. I didn't see the mountains. I didn't see the rock formations the way that I saw them in Oman. They were all around. It made for a wonderful view. Now, hey, let me just say this. If you travel to Las Vegas, you can kind of get an experience. You can kind of get the experience of being in the desert, of being around the rocky mountains. You can kind of get a sense of what it's like to be in Oman. You can get a little bit of that sense. But hey, for where Oman is located, you can't get those views, those majestic views of the sky, the views of the moonlight, of the stars at night. It's unbelievable. When you travel to the Middle East or even to Africa, the views of the sky are magnified. Of course, if you move closer to the equator, you're closer to the stars, closer to the moons, closer to the sun. Yes, it will be hotter, but the views will be even more magnificent. I'm from Los Angeles originally, and I had never seen the stars and the moon so brilliantly in my life, but only when I traveled. And yes, that travel includes Oman. So you get to Oman, you go through immigration, you pay 20. It's probably more expensive now, so maybe $50 for the visa. You get into that country and you rent yourself a car. Rent a car and then you travel. You drive the streets and be very careful. Be very careful. Follow the rules of the road, folks, because those tickets will get you. They have cameras, and they will take note if you're speeding. My cigar has gone out. I'm going to put it aside for now. I'll relight it later. They have beautiful hotels to stay in, and they have high end and they have low end, okay, hotels. One restaurant, one restaurant that they have there is the Trader Vic's. Trader Vic's, as I learned it, first opened in Hawaii. A guy named Victor opened it, and he had the Polynesian or the Polynesian style, the tiki bar, decor inside of there. It's a really nice experience. They serve really nice food. It's a bar. You can hang out. If you go to Trader Vic's, the Trader Vic's in Hawaii no longer exists. So you have to find a Trader Vic's in another part of the globe. And they have one in Oman. They have one in they have a couple, maybe 3 or 4 in the United Arab Emirates. But they have one in Oman. Go to Trader Vic's. Wonderful experience. If you want to get the American restaurant club experience, go to Trader Vic's. And then you have a number of hotels to stay at. High end, extremely high end, of course. Oman is expensive. It's an expensive country. So if your plan is to go to Oman, especially if you're trying to go on a budget, it may be difficult. It's going to be difficult because the Omani dollars, the Omani rial is what they're called. It's quite an expensive currency, and you have to be prepared to shell out some money. Even if it's a short stay, I would recommend going to Oman. I have to use the restroom, so I'm going to have to cut this short. This has been a video that I made to express the appreciation for my experiences in Oman, as well as to communicate to you the idea that you really need to travel to Oman. Because if you're thinking of going to Dubai, as soon as you arrive in Dubai, do the wonderful, go to the Mall of the Emirates, go to Ibn Battuta Mall, and see it for what it's worth. But then make sure you do yourself a favor and fly to Dubai. Fly from Dubai to Oman. The capital city is Muscat. Don't stay in Muscat. Try to get outside of Muscat. 10-15 minutes on the road will land you in a completely different area, and you'll do yourself a favor. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about Oman. Peace, love, and soon it will be Happy New Year 2022. So, woohoo! Peace.